Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Joseph, Dean of the Madden School of Business. Thank you for your incredible support. And now let me move to the right speech. That was the ribbon-cutting speech. Well, you know who I am. Welcome to our 2018 spring semester Madden lecture, Rising Above, It's Not Business or Government as Usual. Every Madden lecture is brought to us thanks to the Donald J. Savage Center for Reflective Leadership. Don's son and primary benefactor of the center, Joe Savage, is with us this evening. Big Joe, it's always good to have you in the house. President Linda Lemura is with us this evening. Moyne Board Chair Bob Turner and Vice Chair Bob Riclitis, as well as several members of Moyne's Board of Trustees, are here as well. The college's leadership team is with us tonight, as are a number of members of the Madden Advisory Board. To our loyal alumni and prominent members of the business community, many of whom are Madden mentors, thank you for being here. Many of Moyne's brilliant and dedicated professors are with us tonight. Students of Moyne, we feel your presence in great numbers. We feel your presence in great numbers. Now that was the warm-up. And how about a warm dolphin welcome to tonight's speaker, Mayor Ben Walsh. The winds of change are blowing. Tonight's lecture carries a powerful message. Quote, creating strong bonds between business, government, and education yields meaningful and sustainable results for municipalities. True leadership is built on collaborative relationships. And to that end, allow me to recognize relationships that epitomize transformative collaboration. From the global banking community, for the 2 or 3 of you who didn't squeeze into the Madden lobby about a half hour ago, we celebrated the opening of the Bank of New York Innovation Lab. Frank, Tim, and team, I'm looking for you. Where are you? We are so grateful. We are so grateful. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that the person that first started talking about this over a decade ago flew in today to be with us. He was also a professor, an adjunct professor for over a decade at the Madden School. Mike Dermody, it's great to have you back. From the higher education community, for those of you who missed the December 18th headlines, the Madden School and SU's iSchool signed an innovative agreement that leverages the strengths of our 2 nationally ranked schools. Dean Liddy, it is always a pleasure to have you and members of the iSchool community with us. Where are you, Liz? Your iSchool is #1 in the country, and our information program is number 18, but we're gaining on you. Last year, we were 24th. From the manufacturing community, Jeff, where are you? It started with one signature, yours. And in the end, 55 signatures followed. With the winds of the business community's support and our sales, the Moyne Quantitative Reasoning Center was born. Thank you, Jeff Hill, and the people of Oneida Air for that very first signature. That is leadership. Finally, I know Bob's timing this, from the faith community, a very warm welcome to Sherry Cogan and to the members of the All Saints Church that are participating in the Keenan Center's Entrepreneurship Boot Camp. In the words of your fellow countryman and church leader, Pape Amani, I'm going to quote you. We fled the Congo because of division, but here at All Saints, we are one. We may never really understand your story, your inspirational journey. We merely hope to play a small part in your new life in America. A special thank you to John Zogby, Renee Downey-Hart, Colleen Giblin, John Nano, Phil Mazza, and St. Thomas More for your leadership. That was an applause line. And Kate Keenan, co-founder of the Keenan Center for Entrepreneurship, none of this would be possible without your and Tim's vision and generosity. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Father David McCullum, Society of Jesus, Vice President of Mission Integration and Development. Please come forward and lead this beautiful gathering with your melodious voice.
It's funny, not even my mom says I have a melodious voice. Well, I'm going to invite you to actually pause and just close your eyes for a moment before we pray. You might think to yourself, wow, these folks up at Moyne pray an awful lot. But we really believe that everything great is a combination of nature and grace working together. And so let's pause just to become still within ourselves and become present to ourselves, maybe for the first time today. Gracious God, source of all inspiration, light, and life, we are mindful of your presence with us now, in the spaces between us, and within that inner room that you have made for each of us, that quiet place where you dwell in the heart-mind of our consciousness. As we gather this night, we give thanks for a servant leader who puts others before himself, who labors generously on behalf of all the members of the community, including and most especially for those who are materially poor and those who have no voice. We ask your blessings upon our mayor, Ben Walsh, as he undertakes his responsibilities for our city of Syracuse, and on all the members of his team, which by extension includes each of us, citizens. Continue to inspire Ben with wisdom, courage, and vision in all his labors from day to day. And may our city and our wider community grow and flourish now and in the years ahead. We pray for these and all the gifts and blessings that come from you, and in your most holy name. Amen. And now it's my pleasure to invite to the podium someone who really needs no introduction at all. Please welcome a real, true servant leader, our 14th president of Moyne College, Dr. Linda Lemura.
Good evening. This is a thrill for me. It is such an honor to introduce our speaker tonight, Mayor Ben Walsh. As a native Syracusan, my familiarity with the Walsh family goes back several decades. To me, and many others in our community, the Walsh name is synonymous with our core Jesuit values of leadership and service. His grandfather, William, served as mayor during the 1960s, then went on to represent us in Congress during the 1970s. Ben's father, Jim, followed in William's footsteps and represented the 24th District honorably and with distinction during a stellar 20-year congressional career. I was so heartened last year when I learned that Ben had entered a crowded mayor's race. At the time, the odds seemed to be stacked against him, as a number of very formidable opponents were also seeking nomination. But Ben, like his grandfather and his father before him, went about this challenge in typical Walsh fashion, working hard, staying true to his beliefs and convictions, and tackling every obstacle head-on with a laser-like focus. It soon became evident that while he had the benefit of the family name, he was certainly not riding on their coattails. The voters learned that his experience working on key initiatives in a variety of positions, both within and outside of government, had given him an understanding of how to get things done. Although much of this professional experience over the past 16 years was far removed from the public eye, Ben's intelligence, integrity, humility, and ability to build meaningful relationships served him well, especially when he entered the spotlight that comes with seeking public office. Ben's call to service was shaped at the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at our very good neighbor, Syracuse University, where he earned his master's degree in public administration. His time at the Metropolitan Development Association, in City Hall, and more recently at Mackenzie Hughes all prepared him for his mayoral run. In November, he became the first person in more than a century to attain the office running as an independent. I've gotten to know Ben much better over the past few months as one of the co-chairs of his transition team. True to form, he handled the transition in a thoughtful and collaborative way, seeking widespread input on key topics: city finances, education, poverty, public safety, and economic opportunity. He entered office a month ago today, happy anniversary, with a sense of pragmatic, contagious optimism. He knows our city faces intractable problems, yet he also knows our citizens have a long history of overcoming daunting challenges. His campaign theme, Rise Above, perfectly encapsulates his aspirations for what we can and will become. Please join me in welcoming our friend, colleague, neighbor, partner, and now his honor, Mayor Ben Walsh. Can I have a hug?
I don't want to share intimate details, but I just wanted to share what Linda just said. She said, "I love that dolphin on you." So I came in with one lapel pin on, and I now have another on, and I'm proud to wear it. So good evening, everyone. I am thrilled to be here tonight. I'm thrilled to see a packed house. I have picked my schedule interestingly over the past month. I had my inauguration a few weeks ago, and that was a big deal, and I had to prepare a speech for that. And the day after that, I was back at the Landmark Theater for the commencement of the St. Joseph's College of Nursing, and so one right after the other. And then yesterday, I had, of course, my State of the City, and one day later, here I am offering remarks. So it has been a whirlwind, but it really has been an honor and a privilege. So I'd like to thank Jim Joseph for having us over to the Madden School earlier for an exciting announcement, and thank you to BNY Mellon for your investment in not just Lemoyne, but in the city of Syracuse. And I'd like to thank President Linda Lemira. Linda has become a great friend, undoubtedly is going to be a great partner, and if I can give half of the energy and passion that Linda puts into her job every day, I think this city is going to be in a great place. So thank you, Linda, for being such a great partner and friend. So as I mentioned, I gave my State of the City last night, and I mentioned in my remarks that I gave it in a special place. So we were at the Public Service Leadership Academy at Fowler. Most of us just know it as Fowler, but for 4 years now, it has been the Public Service Leadership Academy. We're graduating our first class, 4-year class this year. And as I mentioned, it's special for a number of reasons. My grandfather, who Linda mentioned, grew up right down the road on Roland Street in Skunk City, which some people think we should rename it. I love the name Skunk City, for the record. Not on my watch. And he then moved up the street to Tip Hill and raised his family of seven children on Schuyler Street, just up the hill from Fowler, including my father, Jim, another great role model for me. But perhaps most special about being at Fowler was that my mother, Dee Dee, she corrected me today. She said, Ben, I was only there for 17 years. I said 20 last night, and she said, somebody might check that, and you want to make sure you're being honest. And I said, okay, Mom, 17 years. She spent at Fowler working for the Liberty Partnership Program, which, of course, has a special relationship with Moyne College. And I've enjoyed over the years, but especially throughout the campaign, going door to door, and I can't tell you how many people I met along the way that different members of my family had an impact on, but for all the attention that my father and my grandfather get, I probably heard more about the impact that my mother had on people's lives in the city than anybody else, and it was really special to be in that venue and to have my mother sitting right in front of me, and it was a real honor. So now we're up here on Moyne campus, and you would think I didn't go to school here, that I wouldn't, it wouldn't feel as special, but it does. And I was thinking about it, and over the course of my life, there have been a lot of special moments that have taken place on campus. Most recently, I was talking with Linda about it. My parents were honored for Founders Day a few years back, and I think that's when I really fully understood and appreciated how special Moyne was and how much of a family you have up here. And I really do feel like part of that family, and seeing all of you here tonight really crystallizes it for me. So again, I really do feel like this is a special opportunity to address all of you. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. So I thought what I'd do, since I did give my State of the City last night, was cover some core themes and expand upon them a little bit. The three primary themes that I covered, some of which you've already heard about tonight, were cooperation, innovation, and compassion. So let's start with cooperation. As Linda mentioned, my campaign theme was Rise Above. And really the idea behind Rise Above goes back to my experience that I had the first time I went to City Hall, back in 2010. Right before that, I was working for the Metropolitan Development Association, doing work that I loved, urban revitalization, economic development work. But Mayor Moyne surprised me with an opportunity to serve as economic development director, and I saw it as my call to serve the city that I love, and I answered that call, and it was an amazing experience. But when I look back on it, it really was the beginning of the time that I started to think seriously about serving the community in elected office. Growing up in a family of elected officials, I said it more out of youthful defiance than anything. I kind of resisted that idea for a long time. But it was really this moment early on in my time in City Hall. And I look back on it and reflect on it a lot. And the reason it was so instrumental to moving me in this direction was because of what I like to describe as an alignment of leadership that happened in our community. We had a new mayor, Mayor Moyne, who was a great boss and a great mentor and friend to me. We had a relatively new county executive in Joni Mahoney, who I'm proud to work with now in that capacity. And I used to brag that the previous mayor and the county executive barely talked. Our mayor and county executive texted. And it wasn't just limited to city and county. We had a relatively new governor, and Governor Cuomo. I think that his relationship with our county executive is well known, and at the time, the relationship at City Hall was strong. And above and beyond the government, we had great partners in the private and not-for-profit sector. We had Chancellor Cantor at Syracuse University. We had Kathy Rosito, who I think is here. I saw her earlier from St. Joseph's. And many other leaders. I mentioned the Metropolitan Development Association. My good friend Rob Simpson, who has been a friend and a mentor to me, was undertaking the merger of the Metropolitan Development Association and the Chamber of Commerce into the new business leadership organization known as Center State CEO, and there was this alignment. And for the first time in a long time, after feeling like we were stuck in the mud for a really long time, I felt like we were getting traction. Everybody was working together. I was working great with my counterparts at the county, and everything became eminently more achievable and solvable because of those relationships. It didn't mean everyone always agreed, but we all worked together. Unfortunately, that moment in time didn't last as long as many of us would have liked for a variety of reasons. But a number of those relationships started to deteriorate. Some of those people moved on. But after having that moment, after feeling what it felt like to get traction after being stuck so long, to see what it was like to have our leaders working together, ever since that time, I aspired to getting back to that. And ultimately, I came to the conclusion that a way in which I could do that was to serve the city as mayor, and I'm humbled to do so. So that was really the inspiration. And so when I talk about Rise Above, it really is about cooperation and bringing people together. And I was able to achieve that during the campaign. I take a lot of pride in the broad, diverse coalition of people that I brought together. It warms my heart every time I hear somebody mention, and most recently at our inaugural ball on Saturday, that people would come to my campaign events and say, I've never seen all of these diverse people coming together in one place in Syracuse. And this is, as I would say, this is the Syracuse that many of us have been looking for a long time. And so my challenge when I was elected was, how can I take that broad, diverse coalition and transfer it from the campaign trail to governance? And I'm very proud to say that we've begun to do that, both in the hiring that I've made, the team that I've brought together, and in the way in which we're going about our job. So I'm going to talk about a few ways in which my administration is going to use cooperation, I believe, to move this community forward. Let's start with shared services. On the campaign trail, that was a dicey topic. People get concerned when you talk about consolidation and shared services and who's going to win and who's going to lose. But I always felt that if we were doing it for the right reasons, we should absolutely be pursuing opportunities for shared services. The key word there is service. We are here to serve the public, to serve the taxpayers. They pay our salary. And if there's ways in which we can deliver our services better and more efficiently and cost effectively, we should do that. And I'm pleased to say, as I hearken back to when our previous mayor and county executive texted, that the mayor and the county executive are back to texting regularly. I resisted the temptation last night to tease the county executive, but I'll do it tonight because she's not here. She was actually yesterday texting me some suggestions about what I might want to include in my State of the City speech, which were welcome. I can't say that I actually used them, but they were. I appreciated it nonetheless. But we've had the city and county representatives. We've met over a dozen times just over the past month. We are aggressively pursuing opportunities to serve the taxpayers better, and I'm very excited that we'll be sharing some of those opportunities very, very soon. Another area of cooperation that I spoke about last night was in the arena of unmanned aerial systems, or drones. This is such a significant opportunity for our region, and I am so excited about it, and so excited for the city of Syracuse to play a lead role in this initiative. And so I've really doubled down on the city's involvement in the initiative. And as I mentioned last night, when we are done with the instrumentation and software, Syracuse will be the largest city in the country with clearance to fly drones for commercial purposes. The largest city. That's significant. Right here in Syracuse. Not only is it a bragging point, it is a significant economic opportunity, and we've actually already had meetings with some very significant private sector partners that we're hoping ultimately become employers here in our community, and I believe will be. I also mentioned I-81 within the context of cooperation. Now, that might seem counterintuitive to some of you because it tends to be a pretty divisive topic, and for understandable reasons. And while I have been a passionate and will continue to be a passionate advocate for what's known as the community grid option, and I'm sure most of you know what that is. There are people that have differing opinions on that. And as much as I want to continue to drive home my points as to why I believe that's the best option, as I thought about how I wanted to address it in my comments last night, I started to think about how passionate I feel about my position. And as I try to do in any difficult or divisive issue, I try to put myself in the shoes of others that don't agree with me. And really, what I attempted to do was to change the conversation, flip the script, to talk about and acknowledge and appreciate the opinions and positions of others, even if I disagree with them, and try to identify opportunities where we can all win. And I truly believe we can. I spend most of my time talking about what's going to happen after the viaduct is removed and we have the community grid option in place. I do believe that's what's going to happen. But I also made it a point, again, to acknowledge the concerns of our neighbors in the east and west, the concerns of some surrounding businesses. And I've done my homework. I encourage everyone to do their homework. But in doing that and looking at the facts and the data, I think that there are all of the concerns that have been identified are solvable. And I think that we're in a lot better position to solve those problems if we're all sitting at the same table having a dialogue. And so that's what I hope that I was able to start last night. So we talked about cooperation. Let's talk about innovation, a topic that has come up already tonight. And as I was thinking about innovation as it related to Moyne, tonight was a perfect example going to the ribbon cutting. Moyne, in many ways, has innovated. Linda reminded me that you've only been around since 1951, but if you look at the course of the history of the college, Moyne has had to reinvent itself a number of times. And what you see happening up here, especially with the Madden Business School, is innovative. It's exciting, and I'm so excited to be a part of it and to support it. So I think it's very appropriate. It's a very appropriate venue to talk about the importance of innovation as we go about all of our work. I spend a lot of time talking about innovation as it relates to our I-team, our innovation team, which was funded through former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg's foundation. That's how we originally received funding for our I-team. And while the initial costs were provided by the foundation, we are now in a process of actually shifting to institutionalize the I-team to make it a part of everyday city government. And what I have found already in many different ways is when you apply innovation and innovative principles and innovative people to very difficult problems, solutions begin to arise very quickly. And so we are going to continue to use the I-team to identify innovative solutions to our problems. The example that I used last night, which is kind of funny because it turns out to have gotten as much press as any of the other important matters that I talked about, was the city's use of beet salt, which I had never even heard of before I became mayor. But I did notice as I would go into City Hall that the salt looked a little different. It was purple, and it turned out that our building maintenance team had found that beet salt was more effective, was more environmentally friendly, and I use that as an example of how we can innovate in very basic ways. Another way in which we're trying to innovate, and it has not been without controversy, is snow removal. You would think that a city like Syracuse, get more snow than any other city in the country, would have figured it out by now, but if you go on the city's Facebook page during any major snow event, you will find apparently we have not figured it out by now. So we are applying innovation to snow removal. One specific way in which we're doing that coming up next week, and Liz Liddy's here from the I School, and John Liddy, we have a snow plowing hackathon that's going to be taking place at the I School next week. So we're going to get presumably some Red Bull, some candy, and some pizza, and bring a bunch of innovative people together. And we're piling on all of the data that we have, and we're going to see if we can come up with more innovative ways to remove snow. And I believe that we'll be successful in that. So, in addition to moving snow off of our streets, we've also talked about the importance of moving snow off of our sidewalks. Not everyone has a car, and in Syracuse, where poverty is a significant issue, I think we all need to remind ourselves about the varying ways people move around our city, and we need to approach transportation from an equitable standpoint and make sure that those that are walking or biking, that they have the ability to navigate our city as well. And when there's snow on the ground, that is a challenge. So that is a challenge that we are focused on, that we are applying innovation to. We actually have a snow safety summit coming up on February, Greg, help me out here, 15th. And that is another way in which we're going to try to address the issue. And having spent 6 years in City Hall, usually the way it goes with snow removal is everybody gets worked up about it, and then the snow melts, and we forget about it and we move on. I assure you we are going to try to strike while the iron is hot, while everybody's focused on it, and come up with solutions once and for all to this great asset that we have here in our community in snow. So one more point on innovation that I want to talk about. With the I-Team, each year they are tasked by the Bloomberg Foundation to come up with a new focus area. And we thought we would do something a little bit different this year, try to put our own stamp on it with the new administration. And so when we talked about how we would go about selecting the focus area, we decided to put it out to the community. Why not find new ways to engage with the community to help us identify that priority area? So we, through a number of public engagement opportunities and online, we received a lot of ideas. And we've taken those ideas and we've distilled them down to 6 finalists, which as of last night we have put out on our website. And we also have opportunities to vote in our libraries on those 6 finalists, which are as follows: housing stability, sidewalks, shockingly, I know, neighborhood business districts, alternative transportation, sustainability, and neighborhood beautification. So I encourage all of you, if you live in the city, you can vote up until February 14th, and those votes will go contribute significantly to ultimately the decision I make for our focus area. You can not only get on our website, you can get on our social media, you can email me at mayor@syrgov.net, or just call the office with your input. We encourage it. Finally, I want to talk about compassion. Compassion and how we serve, and compassion and how we lift up all in our community, especially those who have traditionally been left behind. I try to practice compassion in everything that I do. And when I talked about the importance of service leadership to me, and I was glad to hear that term used, that's really how I look at it. I've tried to incorporate that, not just into the way in which I govern, but into other ways in which I engage in the community. One example was last week. You may have seen some news on it, which, despite my best efforts to not make it about me, ultimately we did get some news coverage on my participation in the point-in-time homeless count that I did with the rescue mission. So every year, all across the country, the federal government tasks communities with going out and actually determining at that point in time how many homeless people you have living unsheltered and on the street. With the group that I was with, we actually encountered 2 homeless people out on the street. One just happened to be an area where I've spent a lot of time downtown over the years. I know our community pretty well, and so we decided to take a turn downtown and go to a place where I'd seen people before. And sure enough, we stumbled upon a gentleman named Steve, and he was pleasant. He was engaging. And ultimately, we talked for a little while, invited him to come in, and he wasn't ready to come in, and we had to respect that. We gave him a pair of gloves. We wished him well. He happened to share with us where he spends his time during the day, and we went on our way. Next day, I'm out walking out of City Hall. Steve comes walking by. Jump in my car. I catch up to him. I ask him how he's doing. Ask him if he's ready to come inside, and he said, well, I'll be here at this place tomorrow. If somebody wants to come by, we can talk. To their credit, rescue mission next day shows up, meets him. The next thing I hear, I get a text on my phone, and it's a picture of Steve sitting on a bed in his new apartment, indoors, smiling, and receiving the services that he needed. And it was just a great reminder how as intractable as our challenges seem, sometimes if you take it issue by issue, person by person, and show compassion, that we really can make a difference. And that was a very inspiring moment for me. I also want to bring up compassion again within the context of the I-81 discussion. For as much as we focused on protecting all of our collective special interests, I see it as really a once-in-a-generation opportunity to lift people up in this community in a way that we've really never been able to do. This is a significant opportunity not only for construction jobs, but long-term for other types of jobs that we need to capitalize on. And as much as I don't like to admit it, especially because I would have liked to have had a decision made already and be moving forward, if the project happened tomorrow, we wouldn't as a community be prepared from a workforce development standpoint to provide the workforce necessary for this project. So rather than sit around and wallow and complain about the fact that it isn't moving as quickly as we liked, I tried to refocus my energy, and to the county executive's credit and other leaders, they've supported my desire to do this, to say, okay, well, what can we do now? What can we actually control? And I think we have an amazing opportunity to bring our workforce development partners together. I saw Lenore Seeley earlier from CNY Works. I don't know if Lenore is still here. There you are, Lenore. But we see a really amazing opportunity. We have a great model in the City Build initiative in San Francisco that we were made aware of, where we actually will bring our workforce development partners together and begin training people for not just the construction jobs that are available, that will be available, but the other potential job opportunities once the project is complete. We have the labor unions on board. We have our workforce development partners on board. We have our private sector partners on board. And through what we're calling Syracuse Build, I think we have, again, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to lift people up, to identify the people most in need, and to put them in a position to achieve economic opportunity and success going forward. So I'm very excited to move that initiative forward. I closed my remarks last night with a story that I'm going to share with you tonight that I think really epitomizes not just compassion, but all three of the values that we discussed. I heard a story after one of our department head meetings a couple weeks back. I heard some of my colleagues talking, and as the story began to unfold, it opened up my eyes to the opportunities that we have as a city and as servant leaders to impact people's daily lives in really profound ways. So the beginning of the story is our code enforcement officers are out on the street, as they always are, and they came upon a small white house that was hidden by trees. You can see it right there. And when they looked a little bit closer at it, what they noticed was it was actually leaning a little bit. They could have walked by. There's a lot of houses in disrepair in the city, unfortunately, but they saw that and they went to the door. They knocked on the door. An elderly woman answered the door, very friendly, invited them in, and they proceeded to explain that they were concerned about the stability, the structural integrity of the building. As they're talking, literally, they can hear the house creaking and groaning as they're standing in there, to the point where they were immediately concerned about their safety and her safety, and implored her to come with them to leave the house and to seek shelter elsewhere. She ultimately decided that she was not prepared to do that. She thanked them for their concern and sent them on their way. They could have went to the next house after that, but they didn't. They regrouped. They consulted with the fire department, with the police department. They put together a plan, and the next day they went back. They knocked on the door again. This time we had some police officers and some firefighters. Again, they're walking into a house that they can literally hear creaking and that is leaning. The woman lets them in again. They sit down with her. They talk. They explain the severity of the situation, that they're there to help. These are people that get paid to put out fires and to catch bad guys. And they're sitting with this elderly woman in a house that very well could fall down on top of them. And ultimately convince her that it's in her best interest to leave. They take her out of the house. They bring her up to St. Joseph's Hospital, where she is today. She is working with our not-for-profit partners, is going to be ultimately housed, and the building is probably going to come down tomorrow. And it was just another great reminder to me how compassion is so critical to all of the work that we do. But again, not just compassion. When you think about the way in which they approached that challenge, it was about innovation. They had to come up with a new plan. It wasn't in the rule book. They had to work together, not only between different departments, but with this individual. And again, by showing the compassion that they did, ultimately they ended up probably saving this woman's life. So I will use that as an opportunity to close again, and hopefully to reinforce the things that I feel are so important to service leadership, the things that are so important to me as a person, and that ultimately are important to the city of Syracuse. I hopefully left some time, I think I did, to answer any questions you have, but it's been an honor and a privilege to speak with all of you tonight, and I look forward to hearing some questions. So with that. Do we have time for?
We have time.
Great. Okay.
As much time as you want.
Okay. Who's up? We're at a college. So. Who wants to go first? Anything's on the table. I just got finished with a campaign. I can take it. Whatever you want to bring. Here we go. Yes, sir. Step right up. Thank you.
Mayor, I was wondering, you have 250,000 college students within a 2-hour radius of Syracuse, New York. How are we going to do it?
Yeah, great. Well, great question. When I talk about the issue of attracting and retaining young people to live in our community, often I use Moyne as my first example of where we're actually doing it right now. We are so lucky that to have Moyne as a partner and the students here at Moyne. And we're so lucky that many of them ultimately choose to stay in this region. So I think Moyne gives us a great template to work with. But ultimately, I think it's about creating a dynamic, vibrant city. Another element of my plan that I talked about last night was implementing a bike share program. Young people want to be where there are interesting, entertaining things happening all the time. And we have what we've seen in our urban core over the past decade is really a renaissance. People, especially young people, they don't want to go where they could find something in any community. They want authenticity. They want creativity. And so I think what we've seen happening in our urban core is a great start. It has helped us to lay the foundation for being a community that can continue to attract and retain young people. I think we need to continue to invest in innovation and capitalize on all of the amazing ideas that many of these young people have. I said during the campaign that I wanted to be a community, a city, and a mayor where people with big ideas want to be and feel like they have an opportunity to implement those ideas. I can't tell you how many times over the 6 years that I was at City Hall where somebody would come in all excited. Sometimes it was me, and I would throw out this, what I thought, of course, was a great idea. And what do you think the answer was? No, you can't do that. That's not how we do things around here. That's done. That culture is gone as far as I'm concerned. I want to be. I'm establishing a culture at City Hall. We are establishing a culture at City Hall in the city that is inclusive, that is open-minded, that is willing to take some risk, which I think we all agree we need to do if we want to really make progress. So I'm hoping with the culture that we're establishing in City Hall that will permeate throughout the city and the investments that we're making in our city to make it dynamic, to make it creative and innovative, I'm hopeful will give us an opportunity to retain more young people. Yes, sir. And I think Linda and Liz and Chancellor Severud would tell you that they are engaging regularly with our partners in higher education throughout the region. I know during my time at the MDA before it was Center State, We engage regularly with Tony Collins up at Clarkson, with Cornell. I'm an Ithaca College alum, and but your point is very well taken. I think the sky's the limit for how we can engage those institutions and capitalize on their assets, namely, the young people that are there. Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And obviously so pleased to see the way that both in your campaign and in your initial month and everything that you've been able to develop such a wide coalition.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
That's great.
Appreciate it.
My question is kind of a broad one, which is just living outside the city. And obviously, I do an awful lot in the city, as do most of us in the county. But what concretely can happen with greater city-county cooperation? Now, obviously, there's the plan, or the consolidation plan, and I know I've heard your dad speak on that in the past, maybe 3 times last year, in the last 2 years. And I don't know how you're thinking about that, but in addition to that, or alongside of it, or is there any way that there can be a greater sense of buy-in, even on informal levels, from all of the municipalities around the city, whether it's formally through mayor's meetings or other kinds of meetings or other citizens groups that can get us to appreciate how the city, if the city thrives, then we all thrive.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I think there's a number of different ways to approach it. Number one, I've encouraged those that don't live in the city but are passionate about the city and appreciate the role that the city plays in the region to be vocal about that. Unfortunately, oftentimes what people read, especially if they don't live in the city, then they're looking just through the lens of the media. They tend to only see and hear about the bad news. And I think probably everyone in this room that is a part of all the great things happening in the community, it's especially important for those that are that live outside of the city to make sure that that they're talking about and all of the great things and helping their neighbors and friends and colleagues to understand and the important role that the city plays. I also think that as we approach it from a shared services standpoint, I see value so far beyond just saving some money and delivering services a little bit better. I think oftentimes the arbitrary political boundaries that separate us have created divisions beyond geography that get into issues of race and class that I think if we can have an open and honest dialogue about how we are inextricably connected and we can get past those boundaries, a lot of those other divisions in our community, I think those barriers start to crumble. So what I have tried to do again is not try to hit people over the head with how great the city is and how important it is, but try to identify those areas where we are connected, where our destinies are intertwined. Focus on those opportunities where we can all feel like we win, and ultimately, to help people understand that, to your point, a strong city does support a strong region. So it's again, there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but I think my approach is to focus on what we have in common, try to help people understand and get beyond those arbitrary divisions that oftentimes keep us apart. So just a few thoughts for you, but it's an important question and one that I'm focused on trying to figure out. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you for your commitment to our community. Last night in your State of the City, you mentioned Moyne College specifically, and I believe you were referencing an education for the modern economy. And I think I see a lot of that firsthand here, and I think you might have alluded to it in some of your talking points, but I was wondering if you might expound on some of your thinking with regard to that.
I don't know, Linda, should I? No, it's an ongoing conversation, but what I can say is from the moment I was elected, I was hearing from Linda and her team up here at Moyne that we're could not wait to partner with the city, and perhaps more importantly, the city school district, and I think understand in a way that I haven't seen any other institution fully understand and appreciate the importance and the role that the city school district can play in helping us to prepare for the modern economy. We have BNY Mellon here, and whether you're talking to them or any of the other of the large employers, what you'll hear is that their biggest concern, it isn't taxes, it isn't real estate, it's workforce. And it's as the baby boomers retire, who are they going to replace their workforce with? And again, to Linda and her team's credit, they have, I think, identified an amazing opportunity, specifically with the Syracuse School District, to begin at a very early level to provide our young people with the skills that they need, the analytical skills, to ultimately fill many of those jobs that are going to be available. So, yes, sir.
Well, I'm very excited for you to be our mayor. I'm a city resident, and I've been a little concerned over the last bunch of years about the direction of our region and our city. But my question specifically is, as a city resident, neighborhood blight and specifically abandoned homes is a major issue in our neighborhoods. And regardless of how much money I put into my house and how fantastic I think my house is, unfortunately, the neighborhood around me significantly affects the value of my home and the stability of my neighborhood, and the ability to have relationships with my neighbors and let them be ongoing. It seems like once people reach a certain family status, they're gone, and unfortunately their house can't sell for as much as they would like, and oftentimes they turn into a less stable housing situation. How are you planning on trying to attack that in the next 4 years?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and personally speaking, I can relate. You know, I think for many of us, when anytime a for sale sign goes up on my street, you kind of get nervous, right? And you think, oh, you know, why are they moving? Who's going to move in? How's that going to? You know, is somebody going to buy it? How much are they going to buy it for? And I said when my wife and I bought our house 11 years ago, and we started getting to know the neighbors, I said, I really want to keep my home life separate from my professional life. I was working at the MDA in the city until I had a vacant house on the street, and then another vacant house. And quickly my worlds collided, but ultimately it again really hit home how much just one vacant house can impact a street. I have a street or a house on the bottom of my street on the corner that's been vacant for probably just about 10 years, and unfortunately it's what we describe as a zombie property. So, and I want to talk about the land bank and what we've been able to do from a tax delinquency standpoint, but where we need to figure out new and more innovative solutions are with these zombie properties that are caught in that in between abandonment and foreclosure, and we have a hard time tracking down who's responsible for them. But I am proud to say that I think what we've been able to accomplish with the Greater Syracuse Land Bank has helped. It hasn't solved our problems, certainly, but going back to my time at the MDA, we identified the land banking model of all places in Flint, Michigan, and as the folks in Flint told us themselves, if we can do it in Flint, you can do it anywhere. And so we now, thanks to collaboration between the city and the county and New York State in passing enabling legislation, have the most successful land bank in New York State. I met with the land bank leadership today, actually, and I think at the very least, what we have in the land bank now is a responsible property owner. So when you do have a house that goes vacant, if it's tax delinquent, the city can seize it, hand it over to the land bank, and you can know who to call if you have problems. But like I said, it's tax delinquency is just one part of the equation. You have mortgage foreclosures that are also contributing to it. But I think that we need to, what I've asked our Department of Neighborhood and Business Development to do is to use the data that we have to try to put us in a position where we can be more proactive and identify those blocks where you might have one or two vacant properties that perhaps like yours, if one more goes, you're out. And We've done some great mapping and have begun to hone in on some of those, what we would describe as transitional streets and neighborhoods. And in addition to continuing to support the neighborhoods most in need, we need to make sure that we're investing in our transitional neighborhoods and, frankly, in our stable neighborhoods. That's the one thing I think we used to be able to take certain neighborhoods for granted, whether it was Strathmore or Sedgwick. And the reality is, for any of us that live in any of those neighborhoods, none of them are immune from vacancy, blight, quality of life issues. And so we're going to try to identify strategies that address the specific needs of each of those neighborhoods. One way in which we're going to do that is by creating the Quality of Life Commission again, to help us prioritize specific neighborhoods. But it's a point well taken and something we're focused on. Yes, sir. Great.
Yeah. First off, I'd like to thank you, Mayor Walsh, for coming to speak to us tonight. Also, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ben Walsh as well.
Hey. Now, all right. So I have some questions now. Are you a baseball player?
I am a baseball.
Are you a really good baseball player?
I am.
Did you go to West Hill?
I did.
Okay, so we have 2 out of the 3 things in common: our name and the fact that we went to West Hill.
Okay, great.
But I have your reputation precedes you. So nice to finally match the name with the face.
Yeah, you too. Nice to meet you. No, just the question I had is, what advice that do you have for all of us who are still in college, moving forward in our lives and our business careers?
So that's a great question. I'll start with the advice that my father gave me that has served me very well, which is, you don't have to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. You just have to figure out what you want to do next. And that's always helped me to kind of keep things in perspective. And so I would encourage you to think about, as you graduate, use that as your guide. I encourage everyone, regardless of whether you're getting into government or public life, be an engaged citizen. And again, I credit Moyne. I think Moyne students are more engaged than probably any of our other local institutions. And small things: read the paper, watch the news, know what's going on in your neighborhood, in your city, and figure out where you think your service can do the most good in the community. You're a Jesuit institution here. I know it's deeply ingrained into everything that you do. So as you're figuring out what career you want to pursue, always keep an eye towards how you can do good for your community. And I think the way in which you do that is by being engaged, being informed, and then you just have to figure out what you want to do next. So. Great to meet you, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
You too.
All right. All right. Last one.
First and foremost, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you for coming to Moyne, speaking to us tonight. My question might be a little less serious than a lot of the other topics you covered tonight.
Sure.
But I grew up right down the street from the Westcott Reservoir, and when I was a child, I would go past the Westcott Reservoir on a given snowy day, and there'd be hundreds of kids, not hundreds, that was a little exaggerated, but probably 100 kids down sledding, and there's no real safe place or spot anymore in Syracuse to go and sled. And I've read somewhere that part of your agenda was to find a safe destination for sledding in Syracuse, and I'm curious.
Great question.
What might your plans be?
What an appropriate question to end on. So that. I really look at I recorded a video with my 2 daughters and my dog in our backyard, and I look back on it now. It kind of launched my campaign for better or worse, but I got some ridiculous amount of views. But what I said, I identified the point that sledding is illegal on city property, and that I was going to make sledding legal and safe in the city, and as far as I'm concerned, that is one of the 2 most important campaign promises I made. The first one was that I was going to take my 2 daughters, my 8-year-old, my 4-year-old, and my wife to Disney World after the election, win or lose, and we did that. So I've delivered on that one. Sledding's next. So we've been a little distracted by this whole snow plowing, sidewalk clearance issue. But I've made it clear that as part of our Snow Safety Summit, we are going to talk about sledding. I've challenged all of our city department heads that that have an impact on it, from our Parks Department to our Water Department, to identify where they believe the safest places in the city to sled are. And then, much to his chagrin, I informed my corporation counsel that regardless of what his opinion is, we're going to figure out a way to make it legal. And so,
Thank you.
we're not there yet, but we will be there soon, and then I'll see you up on Westcott. Thanks. Okay, thank you all so much again for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for having me.